أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Moderated mediation using SmartPLS 4. In this session, we are going to focus on how to perform moderated mediation analysis using SmartPLS 4. In the last session, we also looked at moderated mediation, but that was a different model where the moderator was moderating a different relationship. Now in this case, we've got one predictor, one mediator, one moderator, and one outcome variable. And the variables are continuous. Now look at this here. In the previous example, the moderator was right here, moderating this particular relationship from X to M, that is your path P1. Now in this example, what happens is your moderator is moderating this particular relationship from X to Y, that is your P2. And the interaction effect is on your ultimate dependent or criterion variable, that is Y. So previously it was the interaction of X into W affecting M here. X into W. And in this case it is M into W. M here and your moderator here and affecting this variable here. Now in the last session, we did not need to use or perform any manual calculations to find out the moderated mediation, that is the index of moderated mediation. But in this case, since the location of your moderator is changed, we will need some manual calculations, but they are really easy to do. Moderated mediation. In more complex models, where you may have a mediation model just as we had, there could also be a moderator. That is what we are doing in this particular analysis. Not only you are trying to determine if mediation is present, but you are also trying to see if a moderator is changing the strength of indirect effect. That is, your moderator moderates positively or negatively the indirect effect. Now in this example, we are going to examine if the moderator, that is your role ambiguity, if your moderator, that is your role ambiguity, is influencing the indirect effect. Indirect effect of what? Organizational commitment on organizational performance through collaborative culture. Now our moderator is role ambiguity, which negatively influences the relationship from organizational commitment to organizational performance through collaborative culture. And this is the graphical representation. Moving on. I did not talk about this in the last session, but to avoid any confusion, you cannot just go directly and do your conditional mediation. You first have to assess your measurement model. You have to assess the reliability and validity of the constructs in your study. Just the normal routine that we have, your measurement model assessment. Moderated mediation is part of structural model assessment, whereby you are assessing the relationships. If you are assessing direct relationship and you have got hypothesis for it, then assess your direct relationships. If you've got mediation effects tested separately than moderated mediation, then you have to assess your indirect effects. If you are testing moderating relationships separately, then you've got moderating relationship. Well, this does not mean you have to have separate model for each one of them. In one single model, you can have all these relationships and SmartPLS will give you all the results. And finally, you do your conditional mediation. So performing conditional mediation does not mean that you do not have to do all these. This is a must. You will have to assess your measurement model. However, in structural model assessment, maybe you are not assessing any direct relationship. Maybe no indirect relationship. Maybe no moderating relationship. However, this is not the case. So you do have separate hypotheses for these. And finally, you do your conditional mediation. Now again, a quick review of what we have done already with respect to the theory. Now conditional mediation and moderation analysis in PLS-SEM are frequently employed and well understood. The same does not apply to conditional mediation, and that draws on both. Now conditional mediation uses both mediation analysis and it uses both moderation analysis as well. Indeed, extant PLS-SEM applications of conditional mediation analysis often refer to differently, vary in their execution and how they are interpreted. Now, this is different to what we normally do for mediation and moderation. Hence, this session seeks to provide guidance to proficiently conduct conditional mediation analysis in PLS-SEM. The conditional mediation index, that is index of moderated mediation, quantifies the effect that a moderator has on the mediated relationship. So how will you know whether there is moderated mediation? You need conditional mediation. Hence, through this index, you will know whether there is conditional mediation or not. So if your conditional mediation is significantly different from 0, a conditional mediated effect is smaller, larger, or opposite in sign at different level of the moderator. We are going to look into this later. So an index term analysis should be conducted when the moderator is continuous, and the goal of conditional mediation analysis is to assess the rate of change or slope of the relationship, that is whether with the change of the moderator there is change in the indirect effect or not. Okay, we have already talked about this. Index term is known as index of moderated mediation. Now we will find out the index of moderated mediation in this particular case, because this model is different than what we did earlier in the last model where the moderator was moderating a different relationship. Now previously, since it was this relationship being moderated here and your moderator was here, so this relationship P1 and this was the interaction term, and interaction term was affecting this mediator here. So it was, the relationship was P2 into P5 for index of moderated mediation. This was P5 and this path here was P2, and it is currently here as well. Look at this. So P2 into P5 was your index of moderated mediation. Now in this case, the situation is different. Your moderator is here. So if your moderator is here, so your moderator, its interaction term still P5, and the other path is this one. So it will be multiplied by the other path. In the last case, it was here. So this was your P5. So it was multiplied by P5, and this was the other path, P2. So this was the last example, and this is the current example. Now in the last case, we did not need to perform any manual calculation. In this case, we will have to, because the location of the moderator is changed. So how to do this? We are going to talk about this. If the index P1 into P5 is significantly different from 0, the mediated effect of X on Y through M depends on the moderator. That is, you do have conditional mediation effect. Again, we will use bootstrapping and we will get our results and then calculate the index. So how to do this? Let's go to SmartPLS directly and let's see how it is done. Now here is my model. This is my independent variable, my dependent variable, my mediator. This is the path that is being moderated. This is P1. And this here is your P5. This is P2. This is P3. And the effect of RA on OP is P4. Now let's run the analysis. So you calculate bootstrapping, but make sure there's one important thing, that in order to run moderated mediation, you will need process model. How do you get process model? Right click on the project where you want to edit and then click new process model, and then make sure the new model type is process, name whatever you want to give it, and then double click. And similarly, just as you've done with all the models, you add your latent variables here by just simply selecting your latent variable and let's say drag and drop. If you do not want to change the name, just press enter and it will be added. And similarly, add others, use connect to connect the variables. And for moderation, again, it's very simple. Once you have added the latent variable, click connect here, drag from the moderator to the relationship that you want to assess the moderation in. Now I want to assess the moderation within this relationship here from CC to OP. So drag it on the arrow here. Look at this, it turns green. And now the moderating effect is added. Now how do we run this? Let's go to calculate, bootstrap, Bias corrected, one-tailed, all good. Let's start. Now here are our results. Now look at this, significant because the t-value is greater than 1.645 since we had one-tailed, significant, significant, significant. And where are your results? Go to report and look at the direct relationships here. Significant, significant, significant. Moderating variable has a significant impact. Your moderating effect is also significant. That is, role ambiguity moderates the relationship between collaborative culture and OP. How? Negatively. So it weakens the relationship between collaborative culture and organizational performance. Now these results here can be used for your assessment of direct relationship and moderating effect. Further, you can have your specific indirect effects, that is your mediation of collaborative culture. So whether collaborative culture mediates the relationship between OC and OP, yes it does. So this is how you can use these results to report or assess your hypothesis. But in this case, I'm interested in conditional mediation. So where is conditional mediation? Conditional indirect effects. Click here and look at this. At high level of moderator, whether the indirect effect of OC on OP through CC is significant? Yes, it is significant. Is this the case at low RA? Well, yes, this is the case at low RA as well. Is this the case at mean? And yes, we saw that earlier. Yes. At average level of role ambiguity, there is indirect effect. So indirect effect at different levels of the moderator is significant. But I'm not interested for now in finding out whether the indirect effect is significant at different levels of moderator. I'm interested in finding out whether the change in the moderator strengthens or weakens the indirect relationship from OC to OP through CC. For that, I will need index of moderated mediation. Now in the last example, we did had that through specific indirect effects. But in this case, we do not have it. For now, we will have to do some manual calculations. Now, where are our manual calculations and how are we going to do this? For this, you will have to go to path coefficients and click samples here. Now, these are individual relationships, the P1, the P2, the P3, the P4, and all those. So you copy it into Excel, and I've already done one. So I'm just going to use the sheet 2 here, rather sheet 3. And paste it here. Now let's add a new row. So where is your P1 and what is your P1? Let's come back here. So P1 is X to Y, that is your OC to CC. So where is your OC to CC? Here is your P1, OC to CC. And where is your P5 or P2? Let's say CC to OP, CC to OP. Here is your P2. But what am I interested in? I'm interested in this one here, P1 into P5. So where is your P5? The interaction effect on your endogenous variable, that is OP in this case. So here it is, your interaction effect on your endogenous variable, P5 here. So I want to multiply P1 into P5 to get my index of moderated mediation. I'm not interested in all these other relationships for now. So I'm just going to get hold of this P1 and P5. And I've got it here, P1 and P5. Now to get an index, you simply need to multiply it. How to do it? Once you've got these in these fields or these columns, you simply multiply them. And what you can do to multiply just simply is equal to P1 into P5, press enter, and here it is. And simply come here, move your cursor here, look at the plus sign, double click on it, and then you will have results extended to all your cells. Now I've already done this, so I'm just going to remove this here, delete. Now I've got index for each of my sample, but I'm not interested in index for each of my sample. I'm interested in the overall index. So where is my overall index? Here it is. How do I get it? I just simply average my results from D3, because here the values are from D3. Here, look at this, D3. Why D3? Because D is the column and 3 is the row. Look at this now, D3. So D3 up until 5002. Why 5002? Because we did 5000 bootstrap samples, and 2 because the first 2 rows are occupied by these values here. So it's extended beyond 5000. So this is your index of moderated mediation. Is this index significant? This is what I'm interested in finding out. So look at my lower level confidence interval. How do you get it? Percentile, 5%. So it's minus 0.125. Look at this percentile, upper level, 0.95. Is it in negative sign? Yes. So there is no 0 between lower and upper. This means significant. Look at your standard error. You get it through standard deviation. This is the formula that you are going to use. Now look at this. I'm applying formula on this index column here from D3 to D5002. This Excel sheet will be available via email, or I'll try to upload it on my website as well. And finally, the T statistics. How do you get it? Simply divide your index by your standard error and you will have T statistics. In this case, it is greater than 1.645. 1.645. So you can say, well, yes, your indirect effect is weakened. Why am I saying the indirect effect is weakened when you have got higher role ambiguity? How do I know this? Let's come back here. Conditional indirect effects, and now look at this here. So at high role ambiguity, look at your effect size. At low role ambiguity, look at the effect size. So when your role ambiguity increases, your indirect effect is weakened. So that's why I was saying that the indirect effect is negatively affected by role ambiguity. Here is the proof from beta coefficients. If that indirect effect or index of moderated mediation was significant, yes, the indirect effect is moderated. That is, your index of moderated mediation here is significant. Now moving on, how do we report this? So again, reporting moderated mediation, you just simply have to copy your results here. The direct relationships, the indirect relationship. So your moderating effect on OP. So RA does moderate this relationship, your indirect effect, and your moderated indirect relationship. So again, your indirect effect, your confidence interval, the p-values, low level of role ambiguity, high level, mean level, index of moderated mediation. So you will get index of moderated mediation from here. You will get your direct relationships from here, and you will get your conditional indirect effects from here. Now, once you have done this, the next step, let's have a look here first. So you simply need to copy the results here in this table. Now, how do you report this? The results indicate that the index value of role ambiguity for moderated mediation effect is significant. What was the index? Minus 0.066, standard error, 95% confidence interval, no 0 in between. The results revealed that higher level of role ambiguity, the indirect effect of organizational commitment on organizational performance through collaborative culture, that is, this is the effect, that is the path beta coefficient, the t-value, the p-value at higher level of role ambiguity. This is your indirect effect, is lower in comparison to the indirect effect at low RA. So when your role ambiguity is low, the indirect effect is high. So this means that your role ambiguity negatively affects the indirect effect. That is, when you've got higher role ambiguity, the indirect effect of organizational commitment on organizational performance through collaborative culture is reduced. Furthermore, what I've done is I've got this graph here. How do I get this graph? So in order to get this graph, what I've done is I've got this Excel sheet here. So this is not mine. This was recommended by the authors on conditional indirect effect using PLS-SEM. So what you need to do is you simply need to add your standard deviation for your moderator, that is low role ambiguity, average level of role ambiguity, and high role ambiguity. So this is your standard deviation for your moderator. The indirect effect at low role ambiguity, average level of role ambiguity, and high role ambiguity. Where is this? Now this is here. Look at this here. Conditional indirect effects, mean, standard deviation, t-values and p-values. You simply need to copy this. and you copy it here. Standard error, where is your standard error? Here it is. Here is your standard error. And you copy it from conditional indirect effects. Once you do this, the rest is done automatically. It will calculate it for you. It will do the draft or the graph for you. And how do you interpret it? Let's quickly do that as well. So if the continuous moderator is used in determining the different levels of conditional mediation effect, now Cheah and others recommend Johnson-Niemann plot. This is your Johnson-Niemann plot. Often it is interpreted by examining the middle line and the upper and lower bound values. Now the middle line here means the average level of the moderator. Now by looking at the figure, look at this now here. Now this is your low level of role ambiguity. That is your standard deviation for your moderator. And at low level, the indirect effect is, look at this, 0.230. So at low level of role ambiguity, your indirect effect is high. But at mean level, it changes. It is lower. And further, it is reduced when your role ambiguity is high. Look at this, the indirect effect. Now, this shows that with an increase in role ambiguity, the indirect effect of your organizational commitment on collaborative culture to organizational performance, that is your mediator, independent and dependent, this indirect effect is being reduced. But when you've got low role ambiguity, this indirect relationship is strengthened. This is your moderated mediation plot. I hope this session would have helped you understand how to perform moderated mediation when you've got a model like this. Something like this here. Your moderator is moderating this relationship here. So what you need to do is you need index P1 into P5. And how to do this? You are going to use this Excel sheet here. The formulas and the Excel sheet will soon be uploaded on the website. Thank you very much.